It's really
So,
an honor.
Ashley Kahn here, host of the online interview series that is part of the BIAM PDX Jazz Festival 2021, doing the conversations and speaking with the musicians to get the stories and the background to the music that is being presented as part of this year's festival, a very strange version of the festival, of course, remote online performances. But one of the things that we're most proud of course, is presenting artists who are local to Portland, who are part of the local Portland scene, including our next guest here, Brian Jackson. Brian, welcome.
Thank you, Ashley. It's a pleasure.
It's an honor to have you, and it's an even bigger honor to know that you're going to be focusing your show, your performance for the festival, on a very, very special 50th anniversary, an album that's been around for 50 years and is celebrating its 50th anniversary in 2021. And that, of course, is Gil Scott-Heron's Pieces of a Man.
Hard to believe, but yeah, here we are 50 years later.
So,
Happy.
you know, your role on it, and the fact that you are such the perfect spokesman, to speak about the album and how it came together. That's what we're going to be diving into. But I also want to make sure that we cover, your incredible career as well. And what I, want to point out right at the start to our viewers is that, you have worked with some incredible names beyond Gil Scott-Heron. You've worked with Earth, Wind and Fire, Roy Ayers, Will Downing, and your own music. And you've always been crossing that line between jazz and R&B, jazz and soul. Could you speak to that for a quick second before we dive into Pieces of a Man? Explain, where you came from and how you see yourself.
Well, my parents' taste was somewhat eclectic. They could listen to some jazz, they could listen to some straight ahead bebop, they had swing records. They enjoyed the big bands. In my house, we could go from Sarah Vaughan to Frank Sinatra to Big Joe Williams to Ahmad Jamal to Miles Davis. Sarah Vaughan, Carmen McRae. I mean, there was so many different styles of jazz that I was exposed to at a young age, and sometimes they would flip a classical European record on in there, and so I got a chance to be exposed to kind of an eclectic frame of mind early on. And when I got a little bit older, I think I maintained that curiosity about all types of music. So when I was a teenager, my collection went from Motown to rock, to R&B, to Stax, to John Coltrane, to Albert Ayler. It just I just have always been curious about a lot of different musics, and I begin to internalize them, which still happens even today. But that's where I come from.
That's great. And we're talking about Crown Heights, right, in Brooklyn,
Yes,
which itself is a very musical neighborhood. I mean, to this day, there's so many jazz musicians and musicians in general who are based there in that part of Brooklyn.
Yeah. Freddie Hubbard and Louis Hayes lived right on the opposite corner from me. And I used to like hide behind cars, like to see them just to catch a glimpse of them coming out of the apartment building.
Why were you hiding?
I don't know. I was a
Were
kid,
you an
man.
intimidating? You were an intimidating.
Yeah, I was scared to death of them. It's like, what are you going to do? Like stand right in front of God, say, hey, yeah, you're pretty good,
That I can
No.
understand.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. What incredible roots to come from. And of course, when you met Gil, it was at college, right?
That's right, at Lincoln University. I mean, I had two options: either to stay in Brooklyn and get in more trouble, or um, get go to a school 50 miles outside of Philadelphia, um, and possibly you know get exposed to something else, which is exactly what happened. And it didn't hurt that people like Oscar Brown Jr. and Kwame Nkrumah and Thurgood Marshall and Langston Hughes had gone there.
That's great. Can you
Yeah,
describe for us when you and Gil first crossed paths? Was it in a musical situation, or was it just like,
indeed.
hey, nice to meet you?
Well, I had no idea really what I was going to college to study. I knew I didn't want to study music because I had already taken 7 years of classical music, and I had started to write some of my own songs with some jazz chords that my stepmother, not my stepmother, my godmother had given me. I didn't want to go back. I figured I knew as much about classical music as I wanted to, and I wanted to expand and begin to just had fun writing my own songs. Um, so I the only reason I knew that I had to go to school was because my parents expected me to, and also I knew probably that if I was going to be able to survive financially, that my biggest my best bet was to get a college degree. So I went to Lincoln University. I was not doing so great in high school. I was a good student, but I screwed off a lot during the last couple of years, um, and so I had uh, an average um, grade point average. So I was accepted by one school that I totally expected, which was Brooklyn College, because Brooklyn College is kind of the relative college to Erasmus Hall High School in Brooklyn, where I went to high school. So I was no surprise there. And the other one, I think I applied to four. I think I applied to some school in Connecticut, and then I applied to Oberlin. You know, but I heard they had a pretty good music program. So I was turned down by both of them. So my options were limited. I ended up at Lincoln University, um, and I was immediately turned off by the lack of Afrocentric curriculum that was there. It just, I was so disappointed. I was depressed. I already, had a hard time trying to figure out what I was going to do in college. The musical program again had nothing about jazz or anything. There was nothing about that at the time, and I just didn't want to do that. So in the end, I kind of dropped out in place, and I just spent a lot of my time in music rooms. So did Gil, and we kind of met through a mutual friend of ours, um, who was going to play in the talent show there, and he asked me to perform with him. Then there was one more song, and it was a song that Gil wrote called "Peace." And I heard this guy, and I said, "Wow, these lyrics sound like they're written by a 40-year-old man." And I had a bunch of songs, and I said, "Yeah, let me just see if he'll write a song to one of mine." And I played it for him, and 15 minutes later, we had a song. So that was the beginning.
What song was that?
A toast to the people. A toast to the people. Yeah. So he asked me, "So what were you thinking about when you wrote this song?" Nobody had ever asked me what I was thinking about when I wrote a song.
Oh, so you
I
started
was
out with the music first. No
always,
words.
always, the music
Right.
always
Okay.
started first.
Oh,
And he
okay.
said,
That
"Well, what
was the creative process.
that was the creative process." And he said, "So what were you thinking?" I mean, so I had to really kind of dig down and kind of figure out what I was feeling. And I told him, "Well, it's kind of a song to the ancestors. It's kind of a song to those who came before us, and in the struggle." And he said, "Okay, play it again." I played it one or two times for him while he took out his pen. He always wrote in pen. He never took a pencil because he wasn't going to erase anything. And yeah, by the third time we had this song, and I said, "I'm keeping this guy." And I guess he must have felt the same.
I think we should hear it.
Good idea. It's one of my favorites.
since we came to this land. The South has ruled the day when we would stand as one and raise our voices and say, you know there will be no more lynching and no more talk of class. My sons and my daughters won't die in the hourglass. A toast to David Walker, a toast to Martin King, a toast to all the leaders who had a golden dream.
That's the first tune that you guys worked on.
Yeah, that's right. That's the first
So
time
that
we
led to
recorded it
an.
as well.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
So this is when you weren't. It wasn't Gil recording as Gil Scott Heron. You guys were recording as Black and Blues,
that's correct. That's right. And then we
right?
had, I think, 11 people in that band. You heard about it. Yeah, you heard them all. We had 4 vocalists. Gil, uh, Victor Brown was in there somewhere. David Barnes, who was singing lead, and Reggie Williams, who uh, was self-proclaimed the greatest tambourine player in the world. And then he thought about it for a second, and he said, "Well, no." He said he was the greatest tambourine player in the world, and then he thought about it and said, "Well, maybe the second." So he was humble, at least.
What about Gil? Gil at that point was he wasn't singing, but he was the lyricist, right?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, he a lot of the singing responsibilities went to other people, but he sang 1 or 2 songs. He sang "Lies." I'm not sure if he sang it on the recording that we did, but yeah, he definitely.
Right.
We had enough singers so that he could kind of lay back a little bit.
So what's really interesting is that this leads, of course, 2 pieces of a man, and the connection is really coming through your connection with the producer Bob Thiel, who just a few years before had been running Impulse Records and producing John
Mm,
Coltrane.
that's right,
I mean, that's
John
deep.
Coach.
That is amazing. How
Yeah, it
did
was.
that connection happen with Bob Thiel?
Well, Bob had since left Impulse Records, and started his own record company called Flying Dutchman. And I don't think he had the same type of budget that he had at Impulse, and kind of dedicated himself. I guess he was one of the early pioneers of spoken word. And if you look at his catalog, you'll see that most of his early albums were were kind of recitals of articles from excuse me, from some of his from some journalists, like Pete Hamill, for instance, was one of them. Carl Rowan was another one. I'm trying to think, but yeah, they were mostly pieces like that.
Stanley Crouch,
Stanley Crouch,
the
yes,
jazz writer
that's
Stanley
another one.
Crouch, actually
Exactly.
recorded an album for Flying Dutchman.
Yeah, how come nobody criticized that? But anyway,
Yeah,
I digress.
criticizing the critics.
Yeah, exactly. I know I had to throw that in there, but yeah. So that was his bent. I guess it was probably because it was way cheaper. And he was just trying to start out, and some of it was very. One of them in particular that stands out to me is "Massacre at My Lai" by Pete Hamill, and that was powerful. That was powerful. I think it might have had music. I'm not sure. Um, but it was great. And this obviously was something that he was interested in pursuing. And Gil had just published a book of poetry called Small Talk at 125th and Lenox, which caught Bob's attention. And Bob approached Gil and asked him would he be interested in doing something like reciting his poetry for an album. And Gil agreed, but with the intention of possibly being able to record some of the songs that he and I had been writing. And Bob's this is what he really wanted to do, and Bob just really wanted to get him to do the poetry. So what we thought was maybe we could leverage the poetry album, on condition that it did kind of better. And so what we finally got him to promise was that if the poetry album did okay, that maybe he would consider doing a musical album. So we said, man, we got to stack this thing. We got to make sure. So instead of just having Gil read the poems, we thought, what can we do to beef it up a little bit? And immediately our minds flashed to the Last Poets, and we thought, wow, if we just put some percussion, some African hand drums in there, that might do the trick. And then we did that. Gil began to read his poetry along with the conga players Eddie Knowles and Charlie Sanders. And so those two guys formed the beginning of the new of the new band of the Midnight Band, if you will. And Bob's idea was to assemble a few of our friends in the studio to make it sound like he was reading in a cafe or something, and it went over. It went over really well. A lot of people still don't know that it wasn't done live, that it was done in the studio. But a few
This is the first
weeks.
I'm learning of that.
Okay.
I always
Okay.
thought it was live, so it worked on
Well,
me.
it worked. It worked. Well, this is the
Yeah.
genius of Bob, and he called us a couple of months later and said, "So, why don't you come in and let's hear these songs you have?" That's all. He never said, well, I'm thinking about. He just calls up and says, "So why don't you come in, and we'll listen to these songs." So we go into his song, typical Tin Pan Alley type situation, like stacks of reams of music paper all over the charts and stuff, and boxes of albums on the side and in a corner, and him with his assortment of meerschaum pipes, just sitting there, very contemplatively, with a spinet piano over on the other side of the wall. So we come in, and he motions to the piano and tells me to sit down, and Gil is sitting in a chair, and we start riffing off a couple of songs. And he sits there and puffs on his pipe for a little while, and well, let me hear another one. So I think we played him about 3 songs, and at the end of it, he says, you can't get anything really much firmer than that from Bob, but that was good enough for us. I mean, he made his point. And oh man, we started riffing off all these names. We had been listening to Coltrane, so we were like, oh yeah, uh, um, we want Ron Carter, and Elvin Jones and McCoy. No, I play piano. That's right. And then Wayne Shorter, and we just named everybody that we could. Tony Williams, So he said, "Okay, I'll get back to you in a week or so." And he calls back in a week, and he says, "Look, good news and bad news. I couldn't get you all those guys you asked me for, but I did get Bernard Purdy, I did get Ron, and I got Hubert Laws. And you say you have this friend of yours who's a guitar player, Bert Jones." And I said, yeah. So he says, "Okay, well, he's in too." Because Bert had been playing with Wilson Pickett. He went to school with me, actually. We met in high school, and then went to Lincoln. We didn't even know that we were both going there. So that was it. And I have to say, and I always say this, is that if it hadn't been for Ron and Pretty Purdy and Hubert Laws, I always thank them for legitimizing us. You hear the music, you heard that song. This is what all our songs sounded like, and they were good, but um, they made them world class. And they actually, I always thank them for legitimizing us, making people sit down and really listen to what we had.
I think at this point we should definitely play a little something from the album, and why not the title track?
Okay.
Jagged jigsaw pieces tossed about the room. I saw my grandma sweeping with her old straw broom, but she didn't know what she was doing. She could hardly understand that she was really sweeping up pieces of a man. I saw my daddy meet the mailman, and I heard the mailman say, "Now don't you take this letter too hard now, Jimmy. They've laid off 9 others today." But he didn't know what he was saying. He could hardly understand that he was only talking to pieces of a man.
Right.
Still powerful.
Yeah.
Those little portraits that
Yeah.
Gil is doing with the lyric there.
That's his talent. That was his ability to. I always say that a lot of writers write about things from the outside. Gil was someone who wrote about things from the inside, and kind of reported out from that vantage point. That's what made a lot of his lyrics so powerful.
It's especially that title track. I mean, it's such a great image, that he paints with just those words, pieces of man, and the idea that all of us are a collection of different people, and we live in different worlds and we navigate between them. And especially for you guys who are you were just starting out your lives at that point, you know um, what comes back to me when I hear that is what you were saying about how it sounds like someone who's 40 or 50 years has 50 years of experience, and yet he's still in his early 20s.
Yeah, he was just 22. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. No, but that's what we
Sorry.
that's what we want. Oh no, never mind. Go on. Go ahead.
No. What were you going to say?
I don't remember.
Oh,
No, I just it's just that I I don't know. We always wanted to write about things that were not that were out of the ordinary, kind of, and it's just one of the things that you said, just going back for a second, when you started talking, you were talking about pieces, and how many pieces that we have, and I just thought to myself that first that 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 image of grandma sweeping, it's just like, so how easily some of those pieces can get swept away inadvertently, you know even by people who care about us, and that's I mean, you can listen to these songs. I can listen to these songs 50 years later and still come up with different interpretations and different ways to look at it. And I think that's what makes his lyrics classic.
And I'm going to go back to something that you said about requesting these incredible jazz heavyweights to be in the studio. It's one thing to
Mhm.
sit there talking to Bob Thiel and requesting it, but once you went into the studio and suddenly
Oh,
there's the real Ron Carter and the real
oh,
Bernard Purdy, the hit
yeah, that
maker
was an eye opener.
behind the drums, you know,
Yeah, that was an eye.
and
Yeah.
Hubert Laws. What did that feel like, and how was the interaction between you just getting started with music, or your career, I should say, because you had been studying for a long time, but
Uh,
with these veterans?
oh, well, I thought to myself, my God, what have I done? Um, I was terrified. I was actually terrified. And there's one thing is especially, and it was about this song. It was about Pieces of a Man because it was first. It was kind of early on, and Ron can joke around a lot. Ron I think he has a kind of twisted sense of humor. But and I'll give you two examples. One example is I saw him a few years ago, and I said to him, I've been playing a lot of bass synthesizers since I saw you, and I said, I kind of want to apologize, because, I, I still respect the, the idea of someone playing an actual bass. I said, but, you have to understand that I'm kind of a frustrated bass player, and he said, so am I. So to give you any example, of Ron's humor, that pretty much encapsulates it. But um, at the session, we're doing that particular song, and the first chord is I had been written as one particular thing, technically, C11, and he questions me about this chord. He has, is it a C11? I mean, you have a C11, but it kind of sounds like another chord, like kind of a suspended chord. And I said, no, it's supposed to be C11. And he goes, oh yeah, because it just could be like a C9 without a third. And I said, well, yeah, that's true, but to me, I call that a C11. And then I stop myself and I think to myself, what am I doing? I'm having a musical argument right now with Ron Carter or what, or debate. And I just stopped myself, and kind of a reality check. And I said, well, what do you think it should be? You know, and he
Mr.
just laughs
Carter.
and Mr. Carter, and he just laughs and he looks at Purdy and they both laugh, and Hubert, and he goes, no, man, it's okay. I'm just messing with you. It's, sure, whatever. But from
Oh
that,
man.
yeah, but from that, I guess in some minuscule way, I earned their trust, that I knew what I was doing, that I knew what I was talking about. And I mean, everything, well, as you can hear, everything just went really, really smoothly. So that helped a
Incredible.
lot. But I was still scared out of my brains.
Well, thank you for taking us back to that moment nonetheless. And,
Oh God, yeah, it's like it was yesterday, man.
I've got to say that, when looking back on it, 1971 is what the year we're talking about. And Pieces of a Man is joining this incredible list of classic albums that came out that year, including Marvin Gaye's What's Going On, Sly and the Family Stone had There's a Riot Going On. There was a lot
71,
going
yeah.
on.
There was
know,
a lot going on, and
and
did we ever expect? I mean, we never expected that they would be in the same, that we would be mentioned in the same breath as those. But I should have known, with Ron and Purdy and Hubert Laws, and yeah, I should have known, but I didn't. And it's 50 years later, in retrospect, I think, wow, I still can't
I
get my
guess
head around
if you wanted to collect all those albums together from 71, one way of describing it would be it was not just protest music, it was message giving music.
That's
with
right.
this idea of having a very strong connection to that social, cultural, racial moment, of 1971. Can you tell us about that? I mean, obviously it was in the air, but was that consciously what you were thinking of when you were writing the songs?
Consciously and unconsciously. I mean, you couldn't escape politics. You couldn't escape being involved politically, because Black life was political. Just the fact that we existed here, in America, and asserted our existence, um, was political. Just our color was a political issue. Um, where we lived, and our culture and our contributions were all political. They were politicized. And so, just opening your mouth about anything that you experience automatically became political. And I know that there were several artists. There were a lot of artists, who tried to kind of skirt around that, um, and by doing so, made themselves political as well. So there was really no escaping. Um, so we figured, why try? Let's just go for it. And we decided that what we wanted to do was to address that politic, politicization of our lives, head on.
Well, it's very, relevant today. Obviously, it's hard to miss the connection of what it was like in the late '60s and early '70s, and the divisions and the politicalization. That you're describing, the idea that politics is laced into everything, woven into every gesture, every comment, every piece of
Yeah,
music today,
that's right.
seems to
That's right.
reflect this moment that we're in. Are
That's
you
right.
are
It's
you
inescapable.
do you feel like are you hearing music today that rises to the level of a lot of the music that was happening in the early '70s?
There is. I think that even more so now, people want to hear that. People want to hear what's real. I mean, there's enough songs about love and sex and booze and partying, and there always will be. But there are some people who, even if they talk about those things, they want it to mean something. They want it to be relevant to their experience and the experience of others. And I think that maybe the music of the '70s kind of helped to foster that, helped to provide a fertile ground for those things evolving.
I think it makes sense at this point to not just talk about it, but actually hear the kickoff tune, the lead off tune, Two Pieces of a Man, which was people still, reference, people still quote to this day, that the revolution will not be televised. And I think we should hear that now.
Okay.
You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Spyro Agnew to eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by the Schaefer Award Theater and will not star Natalie Woods and Steve McQueen or Bullwinkle and Julia. The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not get rid of the nubs. The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner because the revolution will not be televised, brother. There will be no pictures of you and Willie Mae pushing that shopping cart down the block on the dead run or trying to slide that color TV into a stolen ambulance. NBC will not be able to predict the winner at 8:32 on report from 29 districts. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay.
Wow.
Too much of that
It
is
still hits
still,
hard.
it's, yeah, yeah. NBC will not be able to predict the winner. Yeah.
And the way that line that
yeah,
just in the fade out there, how he repeats that line about and as far as on the instant replay, and then he repeats it,
yeah,
to
yeah.
stress the importance of that. I mean, you
Right.
can't hear that and not think about the fact that, so much of what we can consider now revolutionary activity, protests,
Mm,
people of color being, killed in the streets, for
mhm,
at a simple
mhm.
traffic stop, that is actually going viral. So in a way, parts of the revolution are being
Exactly.
televised. But I think the spirit of that song about the idea that the revolution will not be something that is coming to you in an 8-part series. So don't be sitting complacently by you, in front of your smart screen. You know,
That's right.
is still
That's
so true
exactly,
today.
exactly. You have to get up. You have to get up and be active. If you expect change to happen um, in front of you on your screen, you're in for a you're in for a big shock. And I like to I talk to students about this poem all the time, and I always tell them that you Ashley, you and I, we probably know all of those all of the references that he makes in his in his poem. The tiger in your tank, the giant in your toilet bowl, and all those things. Kids today, they don't necessarily know what those mean. So what I do to explain it to them is, simply point out the fact that before there was online advertising, uh, there was Madison Avenue, and Madison Avenue's whole job was uh, to devise ways to analyze you psychologically and figure out what your insecurities were, and then to sell products to you based on your insecurities. Of course, now that's not necessary because now there is no Madison Avenue. There doesn't need to be a Madison Avenue. There's Silicon Valley, in which is counting your every click, everything that you're even remotely interested in. They know, and so they can target what they sell to you on a way more precise level. But back at that time, it was all about the engineering of consent. And now it's just way more granular in its approach. So yeah, there were these commercials that back then that were all just designed um, to play on your insecurities and sell you things that you you to make you feel that you needed things that you didn't really need. That was the beginning,
Well, Brian,
and this is
you
where
know,
we are now.
exactly. I don't think we could be more on target with that song. The basic message is don't get played. Don't become a tool. know?
Exactly,
And
exactly.
that's what the internet will do to you, just like the TV used to do it to you in the 60s
That's
and
right.
70s.
That's right. That's
Think
right.
for yourself, independent thinking, compassionate thinking. I mean, I don't think there's been a stronger song coming out of that era than that the tune that kicks off that album.
That's right.
And kind of leads me to ask about Gil again. The idea that Gil was able to find the images and the words that could connect, kind of the mainstream American experience with what he was really preaching, which was so revolutionary.
Mm. Well, we were young. We were young people uh, being influenced by all of these things. Um, at the same time, having a maybe kind of an out of body experience with it at the same time. So what did we do? We just saw what we what we felt. We kind of reported on what we felt, and by doing so, I think gained more and more clarity. One of the books that I read that really influenced me was 1984 by George Orwell. And here we were in 1971, 13, only 13 years away. Little too close for comfort when we started to look at how society was moving towards some of the predictions and how government was moving towards some of the scenarios that Orwell pointed out or drew in that book. Um, and so we had a growing sense of alarm uh, about how much power we as citizens of the world and of America were going to give um, to the large corporations, the big pharma and big agriculture, and uh, you know, these are some of the things that we were trying to point out, and trying to bring attention to in the songs that we wrote, and how it's necessary that the only way that you can actually fight those things is to try and hold on to your humanity.
Amen. You know, the album also I mean, it serves so many roles, but as a career launch point for yourself and also Gil, you know, it's worth pointing out that you and Gil would continue working together for 10 more years.
Yeah.
This is but one doorway into that wonderful catalog of music that you guys created together. And that, you know, Gil unfortunately left us 10 years ago. Were you in touch with him before he passed? Can you share with us, you know, where he was at just before we lost him?
Well, sadly, Gil and I had not spoken for several years. It was between, say, 1981 or so, and I hadn't really been in touch with him again until 1994, where we did a show at SOBs. Then 4 years passed, and we did another show at SOBs together, and it was such a magical um, moment, as whenever Gil and I played together, usually were, that we decided to go and work together on the road again. One thing led to another. I had some songs, and I had approached him about maybe working on some more material together when he was arrested and sent to prison. That was the first time, and when he got out again, um, I don't know. Some things had changed. I think Gil began to be more and more paranoid. He began to push away more of the people who cared about him and who he had cared about. Uh, so much so to the point that at around 2007, I had to say, you know, I had a friend I was talking to, and he was a mutual friend of ours, and I said to him, yeah, he's dead, kind of, but he's still walking around. He still seems like he's alive. And my our mutual friend said to me, he said, the difference between a friend who's dead and a friend who's a junkie is that the friend who is dead, he's dead. You saw him buried, and you have to move on. He said, a friend who is a junkie is someone he's dead, but you carrying him around on your back. And I think after he said that, it really made me think, and I decided that I didn't want to carry my dead friend around on my back. And so I said goodbye to him in 2007. We hadn't really spoken again um, between that time and when he passed.
Thank you for sharing
That's
that with us.
sadly, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was painful. It was a
Um,
painful friendship, but I have these gems and this evidence of a great friendship and a brotherhood that I that I can always look to.
Well, you guys climbed some some mountain. You achieved some mountaintops together. Some crests of creativity, and created enduring music that is not diminished in strength, power, or relevancy. Since you put them together, and
Amazingly
I
so.
thought
Amazing.
I think it would be nice to hear from Gil himself. And given that we're, talking about PDX Jazz, a jazz festival, we started talking about that, intersection between R&B and jazz. That it would be nice to see a little moment of this is one of the uh, uh, it's a snippet of a video from the Robert Muggy documentary
Black Wax.
on Gil,
Yeah.
Black
Yeah.
Wax, and I think,
Yes.
and he's addressing the whole idea of what is jazz. So let's see it now.
We choose to start our shows by doing a little bit of this kind of music because every once in a while I have gone into record stores lately, at least, and found our music in a category called miscellaneous. Bothers the hell out of me, the alphabet thing be all right. It'd be under either H or S. They can't get that together either. But the truth is that we feel as though the folks are often too anxious to put things in various little compartments. Too often they are anxious to sweep certain sorts of music under the corner of the rug. We find that this is particularly true with music that they refer to as jazz. Feel as though they have been a lot of folks who have contributed to the culture of our music, who have been responsible for chronicling the times through the music. And that folks who are creative enough to put the music together should be creative enough also to define it. So in defiance of all the trends, we refer to our music as midnight music. Call it the first minute of a new day. Say that we badly need some first day music. Say that we badly need some new ideas and some new things for our music. So what we would like you to do is relax, of course, and enjoy yourself and ask yourself this question about the music. The question that we'd like to have you handle is all of this music and all of these rhythms and all of the things that they do for it become a certain song of music. The question is that jazz? Like, take you there. What y'all say? Basie was never really commonplace. He was always measures ahead. And Ellington was more than number one for the music and things that he said.
I felt we had to get Gil in here somehow, and to see him in his prime, and that's of course with his early '80s band, and from now on, midnight music. That's going to be a category that I'm going to refer to. The music for a new day.
If we had record stores, maybe maybe there'd be a category for midnight music. But yeah, we always had problem with boxes. We always had a problem being categorized. I remember going into record stores and seeing, rather than just put us in one category, they put us in 2 or 3. You can go to the rock section and see it, or the jazz section, the R&B. I'd have to look around. I remember going down to J&R many times and saying, God, where is this record? But no,
and is it
that was our
the S
problem.
or the H?
Yes, or the S or the H. So I mean, yeah, it's something we always had a problem with. So we never bothered ourselves with it. We just tried to write music, and like I told you, being both eclectic, the way we were, and having that come out in our music didn't help.
The other point that I think Gil makes that's in the lyric of that song is a jazz. It was that pretty much all these great legends, Count Basie, Duke Ellington. He talks about Billie Holiday, Lester Young, in the lyric, Coltrane, of course, and Miles. That all at some point, this music is revolutionary music. That this is music about change and really moving stuff forward. And that's what you guys were about. You were branches on the same tree.
Well, we tried to be. I mean, we tried. At least we wanted to be leaves. Um, this is the tradition that we grew up listening to and understanding. And on some level, we saw it as an ancient African tradition, that of the griot, who culturally and through and artistically transmitted the values um, and the history and somewhat of the direction of the community. And we saw each one of those artists as griots in their own way, and that we wanted to be a part of that tradition. That was our aspiration.
Certainly to this day, I mean, I don't know any MC, any DJ, anyone involved in the hip hop world that doesn't look back to you guys as being the kind of starting point for hip hop. The overlap of spoken word, of rhymes and beats, etc. Between pieces of a man and the poetry album before that, those are looked upon as the line in the sand.
There were many before us, though. There was Langston Hughes. I'm sure you've heard his music album. There was Oscar Brown Jr., who I mentioned before. It was even King Pleasure. Uh, you know, uh, Dizzy Gillespie even did some things. Clark Terry. Uh, then of course the Last Poets, and of course Leroy Jones with his style of poetry. I mean, there were so many who came before us that all we tried to do was just build on that, and it filtered it through our own young eyes, and what we came up with. The thing is, when you're emulating your idols, you always judge yourself in terms of how well you imitated them, and very you're not aware at all of the fact that what you're actually doing is your own thing. It's only until some point in the future that either you see it or somebody else sees it. And with us, we were fortunate that somebody else saw it, but way before we did. So we just kept doing it.
Well, that's why it's called history, because it makes sense when you look backwards, at what happened. But when you're in the
Yeah,
moment, you don't know. We're
fortunately.
talking, of course. Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for what you've done, and also for what you're doing. On the 23rd, is it?
23rd,
Yes,
8
the
p.m.
23rd at 8 p.m.
Coming from Jack
You'll be
London.
broad.
Yeah, that's right. In Portland, coming from Jack London. What is it called? The Jack London Review, I think it's called. What the heck
I believe so.
is it
Yeah.
called? Yeah. Well,
But now
coming
it's
from the
the
Jack
Jack
London.
London Live Room, you know,
Yes,
because it's
yes.
it, it's
The
not
Jack
it's not a
London.
club anymore.
No,
You
not
know,
anymore. It's
it's
a
a
club,
studio that you'll right
Yeah, exactly.
that
I
you'll be
mean, so
performing in two cameras.
yep, that's right. And that's a weird kind of a thing that we hope will change soon. But for now, it's it's what we can do. It's how we can contribute. The sound is going to be excellent. The video is going to be excellent. So it's in a sense, it'll be like those old rock shows like Wolfman Jack, your Midnight Special, and your Don Kirshner's, what was that show? So, or a Saturday Night Live special guest. So, let's just look at it like that, and move forward the best we can. But we're gonna have a great time. We're gonna have a great time. I'll be performing with some great Portland musicians, young musicians, greater kind. Um, Looking for my friend percussionist Alacoy Pete to come up and join us. And no, what we're going to do is a lot of those songs from Pieces of a Man, actually. And what I like to do is kind of lay out a little bit of narrative and a little bit of background about those songs, how they got together, and how I see them. Uh, you know, from this
So it's
vantage
going to
point.
be the stories and the music,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
music
As you can
and the
tell,
stories.
I do a lot of talking, so I'll try to limit it uh, in the brief time that we have to perform. But that's pretty much the format. Yeah.
I think we should see the album cover now and just be reminded one more time about Pieces of a Man, that we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of this classic recording, without which the American Musical Library would not be complete. This was such an important release from uh, 1971. And we also, I believe, have can leave with an image of the two of you, the two gentlemen who were at the core of this, um, Brian and Gil together, Brian Jackson and Gil Scott Heron. What's the background on this photo? When was that taken?
19, well, I guess that would be like 71 or two, probably around 72, outside of One Logan Circle, uh, which is where we lived in an artist commune. I lived on the first floor. Gil was on the second. Uh, there were like 5 floors. The building was owned by a veteran of the Tuskegee Airmen, um, who had bought the building. It was a 2-part mansion at one point, where he had taught. His name was Henry Letcher, and he had taught art to community children and other community military veterans who wanted to learn or wanted to get involved in the art field. Uh, so yeah, that had happened for several years, and we through some mutual friends, we landed a couple of rooms in that building, and everybody in the building was an artist. Gary Price, who took that picture, went on to become a director at BET, director and producer of the show BET on Jazz, um, and several of other artists were in a videographer named Leon Collins, and like I said, Henry Letcher. So we all kind of came together as an artistic community out inside of that inside of One Logan Circle, and apparently now it's a really chic, posh neighborhood right now. At the time, it was the ghetto. It was definitely the ghetto. It's where we wrote the bottle after seeing thousands of alcoholics drunkenly try to negotiate their way around a circle. If you know anything about DC, you'll know about those circles. They're very confusing, even when you're straight. So yeah, that was Logan Circle, and apparently they have erected a landmark, um, a poster, or well, a sign with the picture with Gil's and my picture there, um, which is kind of mind blowing, you know. But yeah, so apparently we made our mark on Logan Circle, uh, mostly mostly good, I think.
Brian, you and Gil made your mark on American culture, and we're still learning the lessons that you help, uh, you know, bring to the front, and that still, continue to have, that significance today, and that's why we're celebrating the album. And the for this to be a career kickoff, what an amazing statement the two of you made, together with such incredible support from some jazz legends, your own friends from Black and Blues, and Bob Thiel producing. So thank you again for helping us celebrate this.
Oh, well, thank you, and it is a celebration indeed, and I'm very thankful to still still be here to celebrate it. Yeah, but I'm still learning too. We're all still learning, and that's what it's all about.
Ever the students, never the master.
That's
I
right.
think that's the philosophy.
I think so. you know.
Brian, thank you again, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley. I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
This
Great
has been
talking to
fun
you.
as well.